Hello everyone, it's time for me to go over my 5 fantasy football potential busts that you could run into in your fantasy draft this year. I recently did sleepers, so now I'm going to go and do the 5 potential busts. I'm going to go over the position of quarterback, one of each by the way. At quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and defense. So let's begin. At quarterback, my fantasy bust is Cam Newton of the Carolina Panthers. While he does have tremendous fantasy value, and I still think he does, I think he's overvalued as a fantasy quarterback. I feel like he is going to give you some rushing stats, but let's look at preseason and last year. His accuracy has actually gotten progressively worse as he has developed in the NFL. It was supposed to improve. His first season, he was a very accurate quarterback. This year, not so much. Last year, not so much. He really needs to break that trend to be a top-tier fantasy quarterback, while everyone has, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Tom Brady. Those guys are all meshed together. But then after that, it's kind of like Cam Newton, RG3 kind of stuff. I still think he's overvalued as a quarterback there. Also, let's take into account that he has a new offensive coordinator. Chudzinski, their Carolina Panthers coordinator from last year, is now the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. So you add that together, Cam Newton has a new offensive coordinator. I feel like he does take a step back, at least in fantasy value. Plus, I don't know if they're going to use him in the red zone as much in terms of running the ball. The Panthers will, we'll see with the new offensive coordinator, but I would just be a little weary of him making, you spending a very high pick on him. I think he does have bust potential at the quarterback position. At running back, I'm going to go with Maurice Jones-Drew. Not a surprise to a lot of people. Last year he missed significant time. Was not a very good fantasy player, obviously, because you're not on the field, you're not going to be a good fantasy player. And this year, Jones-Drew is getting up in age now. He's been in the league for a while. He's on a very bad team. And let's take a look at it this way. The Jaguars are going to be down in a lot of games this year. They are not very good. They're going to be throwing the football a lot because they are down so much. That means less touches for Maurice Jones-Drew. That means, less fantasy value for him. Of course, he is a very good pass catcher and he does give you some points that way. But you've just got to remember, the Jaguars, if they're starting off every game down 7 to 14 nothing, they're going to start throwing the ball more. Less touches for Maurice Jones-Drew. Also, injuries have really plagued him. That's big in fantasy if you guys on the field. Not very healthy. If he fell to the second round, I would take Jones-Drew just because there's so much value there. But in the first round, I would stay away from Jones-Drew. I think he has a lot of bust potential. Now, wide receiver, this is going to shock a lot of people, but I'm going to go with wide receiver Randall Cobb from the Green Bay Packers. Now, don't get me wrong. He is a very good wide receiver, and he is going to continuously get better. Well, let's look at it this way. He's not going to have as big a factor in the return game. He did get quite a few fantasy points last year from the return game. I feel like he's going to get he's going to get the same amount of balls thrown to him, but he's going to be more of a focal point on the offense for the Packers in terms of he's going to be more of a featured guy. I think that's going to help Jordy Nelson and James Jones. They're going to get more balls thrown their way. And then if you guys watch my sleepers, Jermichael Finley was also going to get the ball a lot. I feel like he's going to have a very big year for the Packers, especially in the red zone, taking a lot of touchdowns away from someone like Randall Cobb. Now, am I saying that Randall Cobb is going to have a bad year? No. Do I think he's a top 6-7 receiver in fantasy football? Absolutely not. So I feel like if he's around and, if you have a nice team together in the 4th, 5th round, sure, but I wouldn't stretch and get him in the 3rd round. That's 3rd, 2nd round there. You got a lot of bust potential there. You got to value those picks and get very, very high touchdown volume guys, especially wide receiver, if you're picking in those rounds. Early on, I would stay away from Randall Cobb. At tight end, I'm going to go with Rob Gronkowski. This isn't a surprise to anyone. Gronkowski has injury history. He had major offseason injuries. And here's the thing. No one knows when he's going to be back. A lot of sources have been saying, hey, he's going to be out week 1. And I look at it this way for Gronkowski. When he's on the field, he's great to have. He is the best fantasy tight end you could get. But you got to think of it this way as well. He and the Patriots, okay? The Patriots are a very good team. They're going to make the playoffs without him anyways. So that means they could kind of baby Gronkowski in, or maybe sit him out for a couple extra weeks, even though he could play, but they're just trying to get him 100%. In terms of second, third round, well, I guess second you want to take him, but third, fourth round, I would kind of stay away from Gronkowski. But hey, the injury might veer a lot of players away from him. So say if you could get him in the fifth, sixth round, sure, I would take him. But bust potential in the third, fourth round, just because you don't know when he's gonna play. I feel like if you're losing 6 to 8 weeks out of a starting tight end, you better have a freaking good backup to be a contender in your fantasy football league if you take Rob Gronkowski, especially that early on. On defense, I'm going to go with the Denver Broncos as my sleeper. I feel with the suspension of Von Miller, he's out for the first 6 games of the year. The injury to Champ Bailey, the loss of Dalvin Stumerville, the Broncos I feel are extremely overvalued. A lot of people have them as one of the better fantasy football defenses this year. I would actually just stay away from them unless they get dropped later in the year. I feel like the loss of Von Miller means less pass rush for the Broncos. That means less sacks, less interceptions, and more points scored against them. Also, I don't know where the pass rush is going to come for the Broncos. Von Miller was their guy. He makes such a big impact to them. That's 6 games. He might have to go a different route on defense. Big bust potential for the Broncos on defense. Plus, you got to remember, even though Von Miller's coming back week 7, right? He still has to get back into football shape. I'm sure he will keep in good shape, but you never know. I feel the loss of Von Miller makes the Broncos go from a top defense to a mid-tier defense, especially early on. I wouldn't grab them unless it was the absolute last round of your fantasy football draft. Well, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys check out my preseason week 3 review. That will be uploaded later this week.